It's because I was singing this song that I just wrote called "I Am the Monkey Boy."
Uh-huh.
It goes like this: I'm the monkey boy. I am a monkey boy. I like to climb the trees, and that's as far as I got.
So really, you just had one line, didn't you?
It was heavily focused on the being the monkey.
It was a strong start.
Yeah.
And then you thought, you know what, it's going well, let's do it again.
I think it has a lot of potential.
You can't then do a third repeat, I don't think. And that's where you stumbled. Because you got two lines in. You got 2 lines in lyrically. Second line, some would call derivative of the first.
Yeah.
But it works, musically. There's a bit of repetition, always handy. Third line, though, it really felt like you didn't know where that was going.
I didn't. You nailed it. You see right through me, Nick. You always do. They call me... all right, are we starting?
We've been recording for the past 17 minutes. As to how much of that will be in the final episode, we will find out.
You know what I did with my volume here is that I just I was doing that Monkey Boy thing, and then I went blah, and then GarageBand picked it up and was like, oh, that's how loud you're going to be? Okay. And then it adjusted the recording level, even though it's not on automatic level control. Anyway, fascinating stuff.
I am a monkey boy, I am a monkey boy, let me climb up and get a banana. I am a monkey boy, I am a monkey boy, let me into your cabana.
You want to let it into a cabana?
Yeah, you want to let the monkey into the cabana.
Is a cabana like the sausage? Like the Fritz sausage thing?
No, like a house, like a tropical island
like a Copacabana.
Yeah, like a cabana.
Oh, I was thinking of cabana.
Yeah, well, that is, no, that's how you say it. But for rhythmic and lyrical reasons, I had to rhyme it with banana, which is also not how you say banana.
No, I get it. Hard worm to rhyme. That one. Very hard worm.
That's the toughest worm. I feel like I've worked out what the vibe of this episode is already going to be. I feel like we're a little bit loose today.
Oh, dude, I'm loose as a monkey, dude. Doesn't get looser than me. By the way, got some monkey. Well, I shouldn't say.
You got a bit of a
news.
fixation.
No, that's because I've just been reading. I read this weird news article before, and it's a freaking doozy, dude.
Okay, that's a little bit of foreshadowing. I like this.
Yeah. So
what else have we got coming up?
We got a bit of chat. We got some real chat. We got some silly chat. We got one crazy thing happens. By the way, yeah.
Wait, is this a real thing, or is this you just like? No, this is real. I can see it in your eyes.
We both don't know what it is yet. We both don't know what it is.
Oh, I see
but
what's happening.
I'm narrating the episode.
I getcha.
But
you were very authentic in the way you were describing that. I was like, oh, what's happened? I was already
kind of
invested.
Manifesting our own reality,
destiny
in that way,
Yeah. I've got a shout out for James Johnston coming up later in the show. So stay tuned, James. He'll be shouted out later.
Jimmy
J. But obviously this isn't it.
No.
But later.
So that's 2 shout outs, really.
No.
Yeah.
No, he's getting one shout out.
Imagine if you were like so keen on like doing things by the rules that you were like, oh fuck, that was the shout out and
that
I can't
was it.
do it again because
we
you
can't
only
take
get
it back.
one. Yeah.
Oh Christ.
James. All right, what's been going on? Tell me, give me the goss, give me the juice.
What's been going on? I've been watching audition tapes for people auditioning for my TV show. That's quite fun.
Yeah,
it's very fun. It's like watching people say lines that you wrote and then making them into like verbal sentences. It's very interesting. It's very cool. It's like, for some of these roles, we were looking at 20, 25 different people, and each of them come through and give slightly different interpretations, and it's all just so exciting. And we've had so many amazing people audition as well. I'm just enjoying this a lot.
Is this something that if it weren't for Corona that you'd be doing in real life and having people come in for auditions?
I think there would be more of that for sure.
Oh, that would have been cool.
We are. I mean, I don't know if I would have been part of that process. I might have still been because I'm based in Christchurch, and most of that would have happened in Auckland. It might still have been me watching tapes, but they are, like, as we speak, even Gracer in Auckland, and they had a few callbacks for favourites come back in and do new reads of that stuff. So, like, there is some in-person stuff still happening. We're at level 1, so that's totally allowed. Yeah, but that's really cool.
It's a real dream of mine, just to be in a position where you're judging someone on a professional level, you know? Like, you're not on a professional level, but I'd love to just, like, interview someone and hire them. I'd love to have that power and, like, you know, actually, I judge people all the time.
Yeah.
But I'd love to actually put it into real practice.
Yeah, get paid for it.
You know?
The delight of it as well is, like I said, you're hearing things in totally different ways. Some people are interpreting it differently than you ever sort of thought, but it's really cool and interesting for the difference. But there was one sort of character, and one audition tape that came through that I was watching the other day, in which they absolutely just crushed it, just nailed it, just got it exactly right. It was how I pictured it. It was better than how I pictured. They were improving stuff that was just as funny, but totally in keeping with the character. Like, they just got it. And that was so exciting. Like, I don't know how to describe exactly what that feels like, but, like, all of us who had watched it were just like, yep, she got it. She crushed it. That's the character. And that's, like, one of those ones where, like, it sounds so odd when you, or like, I don't know, patronizing or insincere even when you listen to, like, a director's commentary of, like, a movie, and there's someone like, oh, the moment that she walked in the room, we just knew it had to be, you know, Michelle Monaghan for Mission Impossible. And you're like, okay, I mean, it really, like, this was the one. We just knew that Harry Potter had to be Daniel Radcliffe, like, all this stuff. And then I was like, well, fuck, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
If you have a mental picture and this person comes in and just, like, blows it out of the water and just does everything you wanted and more, then I totally get it. It checks out.
Yeah, nice. It'd be nice for them to hear that as well.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, we were completely unanimous when we saw your audition tape.
Yeah. That's cool. We're now inching closer to July. We're probably less than a month away as of recording from us rolling tape now. So, yeah, it's all happening.
Cool. Well, speaking of... actually, there's literally no segue to this. Like, not even one. I just came back from the post office, right? And...
we're less than a month from filming. Well, speaking of that, I just came back from the post office.
I'm sure there's a loose connection there. You could make it work. But my friend Lee sent me a birthday present. You know, my birthday was a month ago, and he sent me a birthday present. And he didn't tell me what it was. He's just like, it's coming on this day, and then he gave me a text saying, it says it's been delivered. And I was like, it definitely hasn't been delivered. I've been working from home, just looking out the window the whole time. I saw the postie come, not there. So it got lost. Oh. And then I was like, he's like, I'm not going to chase it up with Australia Post. And I was like, okay, cool. Must have been a great present. and then we had a chat, and he was like, all right, fuck it. I'll just reorder you another one. And so it came yesterday, and he sent me another message saying it's come. But it's at the post office, so I have to go pick it up. So I went today to go pick up the post office, and I opened it up, and it was this, like, tube thing, and it looked really weird. It was, like, stapled shut. It looked like a small, like, thing that you'd keep a poster in.
Yeah.
And I opened it up, and this, after a lot of work, yeah, kind of like that, except a lot smaller. I opened it up, and this spring just, like, popped out. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And so I'm like, I took out the string, and I very slowly opened up the other end, and it just had, like, glittery dicks. And it was like a joke thing, like a Jack in the Box thing. It was meant to pop up, and I opened this in my car. It was meant to pop up and, like, spray all these glittery tiny dicks in my face. And just because of how I don't
You
know. I just
opened it or
stupid.
it was
I
packaged
opened
or
it up the
whatever.
wrong way. I opened it up how you're not supposed to open it up. I saved myself,
The dick sprinkles.
millions of tiny dicks in my car, but then I kind of like put it back together, and I was coming home, and I must not have put it back together that well. Just as I got in the door, does it again. So all in the front yard, I had to get out there with the Dyson, and like we're on the street, by the way. We're on like a main street. I was on a Dyson just soaking up these tiny dicks. So yeah, thanks to Lee.
I mean, it sounds like the point there was that you didn't actually put it back together wrong. You put it back together right. You actually reactivated the grenade.
I know. Yeah, I know.
You were like, you found this perfectly packaged grenade, and you pulled the pin out and thought, that's weird. You just left it there, and then like walked with it for a while, and then let go of it, and all of a sudden it exploded. Like you actually armed the thing that was otherwise a dud.
And I don't know why I did that. It was just for like neatness purposes. It was just so I could like compact everything, so I could put it, in my hand as I got my stuff out the car.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Double level
Thanks
prank.
to Lee. That was great. He'll never listen to this as well. Lee's the type of guy that he's literally said to me before, we've been talking about some trains or something, and not trains, and he'll be like,
What's your favorite model, steam or electric?
yeah, steam.
Steam?
No, we don't have to do this. Steam, yeah.
Steam.
Steam guy. I'm a steamer. I'm a steamer. Cleveland has a great one, by the way. You should go to Cleveland, yeah. Lee would just turn to me without any prompt and just be like, I've never listened to your podcast and I probably never will. He said that to me before. He's a really
allowed.
great guy.
Half of our listeners have never listened to our podcast.
Yes. Me included. Yeah.
Oh, welcome to Deep Forward, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this lovely winter day. Oh, such a beautiful, foggy evening. There's a low-hanging mist. As you walk through it, it leaves sort of an indentation of your shape. It's quite spectral, quite soothing. It feels like mystical in like an interesting way. And that's all thanks to you, the listener. Sitting through the internet with me this week, I decided to call up my friend Michael. Say hi, Michael.
Yo.
And my name's Nick. I'll be your host for this evening, and I'm grateful that you joined us in this exploration of the mind.
Nice. They get better every week.
I'll take it.
Or worse.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
What about news from you? Other than Dick's, anything of note to report?
Dicks aside, not really, to be honest. I've just been
Cool. Anyway, so this week we're going to be
All right.
talking about the sort of challenges that we as a society face around, I guess, the adulation of former figures. This is sort of inspired a little bit by the pulling over of statues in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests and the way that current society is reckoning with its past incarnations, previous generations' work, and who they chose to adulate and who they built statues of, and whether or not it is right to remove them. So I guess we should just start with Michael. What do you think the reason is that people are looking at statues at the moment?
Well, I think people want them taken down because they are confronted with the past, basically, and confronted with the negative aspects of the past. And I think it's I've been thinking about this a bit, and I think that it's like it's hard. It would hurt to walk past these reminders of people that have directly negatively harmed your particular race.
Yeah. And so do you think then that result, that then action, if you're walking past this symbol of oppression or symbol of injustice or literal reminder of, deaths or enslavement or something because of this colonial figure, say, is the right action then tearing it down?
Yeah. So the debate on the other side is that I don't think anyone's really, well, maybe they are in the States with the Confederate statues a little bit, but I think we can all agree that some of these figures that we have in the past held up as, great men, are actually not all they're cracked up to be, and actually got to that, past perceived greatness by some pretty ungreat methods. But I think the debate on the other side is that people think that if we take these statues down, that it's a slippery slope, and that it will it's almost like us erasing history.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the argument, right? That this was our history, so trying to rip it down is absurd and worse, problematic. The idea being that you A, can't change what happened, but B, that by pretending it didn't happen, or quote unquote trying to erase it, are we doing our society a disservice? I suppose the counter argument, one that my dad has put forward, for instance, is that they should put up a plaque next to it that explains the context, right? Rather than rip down the thing, put up a sign which says, this guy was bad.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely an argument. I heard that earlier on a Bill Maher interview, actually. Someone said that same thing. And I get that's something. But I guess where I'm coming from, maybe I'm just jumping in a bit too hot here, just let me know. But what I don't think the tearing down of the statues, first of all, I don't necessarily agree that, a bunch of protesters or whatever should go in and just take down a statue that they deem to be offensive or inappropriate for the times. I don't agree with that. I think it should go through the proper channels. But I also don't think that the act of taking down statues necessarily erases history, quote unquote. I don't think it actually serves to do that. I mean, you look at Germany banned the swastika and whatever things in Germany,
Statues
probably
of Hitler,
years and years ago. No one's thinking, oh, Germany, that's a slippery slope. You don't forget about these things, and also, it's not like the statue is the reminder. Most people are probably walking past these fucking statues and have no idea what they are. The memory lives on, and I get the if we forget history, we repeat history. I get that, and then I think that's kind of true. But history lives on not necessarily in statues. It lives on in art. It lives on in movies. It lives on in books. It lives on in stories. So history, you're not erasing history, and I think the harm that it actually does to people who are affected by it, the reminder that it serves, does more harm than good. And also, statues are another thing. I mean, we'll get into other kind of Netflix, whatever, later, but statues are a different kettle of fish, because it's like you're actively worship. It's almost like a worshipy thing.
It's an idol.
Like we're worshipping this guy. It becomes an idol.
It's literally larger than life.
Yeah, and I think that's a path that you don't want to go down.
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part. The other thing about history, right, is that a statue is something that has been there for some amount of time, right? These ones that they're taking down, they've been around for 100 years, and that's part of the argument as well. Like, this is a part of this cityscape now. This is a part of this footpath or park or something like that. And so perhaps there is like a difference. I think some of the defenders of the statue thing attempt to separate the idea of the statue's image, as in the person represented by the statue. They try to separate that from the quote-unquote piece of art, which is the statue, the physical thing. And they They want to be able to say, yes, this guy 200 years ago was bad, but the statue made 100 years ago is now its own historical representation, its own historical part of our society. And that independent of who it is of, the existence of that physical thing is now also part of our city and should be respected.
Right.
Do you give that any sort of credence? The idea that the thing itself has merit even if the person doesn't?
I give it a little bit, to be honest. I mean, that it's there is an argument there, but I think that if you're going to progress as a society, then these things, I think it's a sign. If you're doing it properly, I think it's a sign that the society is actually evolving, rather than, just trying to forget the past. I mean, arguably Germany is trying to. I mean, they want to erase the past, and fair enough.
That's actually not fair on Germany. Germany is probably one of the best examples of a country reckoning with its past. They're very aware of the atrocities committed in the Hitler era, and right. Just because they don't Germany. Allow the swastika and statues of him and everything doesn't mean that they're against it. Or in
the sense that they've banned. You can't even say that word, can you? You can't even say Nazi.
I'm not sure about that one.
Anyway, I mean, I understand that that's an attempt to reconcile with it, but I think maybe I didn't express it very well. That it does seem like they want to ban those things and kind of get everything.
They want to remove any potential idolization of that era or of that political movement or of that person. I think you're right. That they've got a blanket ban on that stuff as a way of
so
trying to stamp out that.
What was the argument or debate thing that you had with your dad and your parents?
Well, with my dad, they were actually slightly different between both of them. My dad, we were talking about the idea of tearing down this statue. There was the one thing which is it's not fair to look back with our current standards and ideals and apply them to previous society. Right,
dude. Your dad watched this Bill Maher episode. I swear to God.
I'm sure that he did.
This is word for word.
And I think that is true. Right, you can't expect the person back then to have had the beliefs that we have now necessarily, but I don't think that then makes them blameless. I think you can certainly hold them responsible for what they did, even while accepting that was what society was like. Right.
Right. Yeah.
It is true, but it also doesn't absolve them of those sins, and it doesn't remove the hurt that the people that then look at those kind of objects would feel for the way that they were historically treated, even if today we accept that it was wrong.
Yes.
Sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just kind of thinking about that and kind of agreeing in some way.
The other sort of aspect that my dad was talking about was this whole thing that you were going on about, doing it the proper way, respecting the legal, quote-unquote, civilized process. And I sort of went back and forth with this a little bit, because the calls to deal with things civilized is actually quite a privileged position. That is often something that the majority will say to people that are being oppressed. Just do it properly, just be civil about going about it. When in reality, people have often been working within the system for years, decades, trying to see institutional systemic change and not being able to get anywhere, because when you are in the majority and you're not feeling the effects of, an oppression or, systemic issue, it's very easy to just push it off or shrug it off and devalue the voices of people complaining for, campaigning for change. So that
I get that. Can I just interrupt there? Because I get that, and I get the that if you want to go through, if you say, hey, you can take down these statues, but do it the right way. The right way is going to be, a lot of admin and going through the government. It's going to be bureaucratic, and it's not necessarily, governments aren't necessarily going to want to do that. But if you allow that, then you're allowing basically any groups. You're allowing, what if a group of neo-Nazis decide that they don't want a particular statue and they want to tear that down?
Yeah, there is an argument there, right? None of us wants to see all of the safety nets of society fall down. No one wants chaos and anarchy, right? But at the same time, when there are institutional problems and the people who have the say over that, discipline or government or decision are the ones with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, then you can battle all the right way for as long as you want and never see it change, because it is structurally impossible to achieve that change playing by quote unquote the rules. So there, this was my dad's response to this point of mine, which is that he had hoped that as a society, in the past 2,000 years or more of growth and human civilization, he hopes that we can reach a point in which we have the tools and discourse and systems in order to evolve and grow and deal with our issues civilly, not with violence. And I think that's what he sort of ultimately comes down on, against the idea of tearing this stuff down, is because he hopes that as a society we are better than that. I think that is a nice aspirational goal, but I think that it is naive to suggest that we've hit that level when there are still so many problems in the world that are so deeply rooted that they wouldn't be solvable without marching in the streets, protests, and potentially civil disobedience, property damage, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess you're kind of seeing this thing happen. It's not necessarily. I mean, you're seeing a revolution happen in some regards, at least in America.
Yeah.
And these kind of scenes that we see in America are the scenes that we used to seeing from Brazil or in the Middle East somewhere. And it's tricky because those countries are, say what you want about Trump, but those countries are run by a clear dictatorship. Some of those countries where you're seeing the protesting, and it's not as clear cut with America, but it is a systemic change that the people are looking to overthrow, really, and not necessarily the government, but they're looking to overthrow a system of, maybe even a system of values. We're kind of used to seeing this kind of action from the people happen
elsewhere
in maybe less developed or less stable parts of the world.
Yeah. There was an interesting article I read that was actually a couple of years old. It actually predated the most recent protests and everything, that was talking about how protest isn't civil. And, we're sort of debating whether or not people should be allowed to rally for change, right? And this author, Van R. Newkirk, the second, was talking about the historical, the historical expression of how people need to be civil in fighting for change, and argues that is rooted in preserving status quo rather than addressing the actual harm. The quote that stood out for me is that in the long tradition of American protest, it's incivility that has served as an alternative to violent resistance, and is what functions best as an antidote to the violence of oppressors. He's arguing there effectively that, yes, this kind of behavior, getting in the streets or, telling politicians you disagree with that they're not welcome to eat at your restaurant, or, tearing down the statue, is actually an alternative to a more aggressive resistance, like actual violence, and in through that lens, it is a preferable, more just expression of that frustration than pure rioting and violence, right?
It seems, I don't disagree with that, but it does kind of seem like it could be that it's like people making excuses for this, and when it fits their agenda, then protesting and what have you is acceptable. But if you can imagine what's it like, what would be like another example of where conservatives would be protesting, and if it turned violent in any way, even if it was mostly peaceful, you can imagine that the narrative would be that these guys are way out of line.
Well, I mean, you can look at the COVID lockdowns, right? That was seeing conservatives protesting, right? They were getting out and marching up and down the steps with their rifles to make the point that they refused to be told to wear masks or to stay indoors.
But people on the left did have a go at those people.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you're right. They were targeted and called that at the same time. But there is a I think there is a difference in the scale of what is being asked for as well, right? The scale of the conservative fight, in that, you know, we're comparing effectively apples and oranges here, but like as just the one example that came to mind, the conservative movement there is asking for a less transformational change than the progressive Black Lives Matter movement has been asking for, right? So the stakes are higher for the left than they are for the right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
The other thing, just to give my dad further credit for his arguments, was his point was, so I had sort of said as well, like, okay, so if you're wanting to do this the right way, but the system's rigged against you, you know, you can understand why people would turn up in the streets and advocate for change, right? And his response was, well, you know, then get out and vote, which I think is a valid consideration as well. But again, if the system is rigged against you and the people in power are removing polling stations or, you know, changing the voter ID laws or gerrymandering your districts and all this kind of thing, again, we're looking at institutional problems, and saying simply, oh, well, get out and express your democratic right and vote, is, again, a somewhat naive way, I think, of understanding the ongoing problems that, you know, these minorities have been fighting for.
Why is it naive?
Because to suggest that all they have to merely do is get out and vote overlooks the very problem itself, which is that, like I said, voter ID laws, gerrymandering, removal of polling places in politically motivated ways makes their ability to vote so much more limited, and their ability to unseat the people in power so much more difficult. So it is not it's not simply applicable to say just like, oh, we'll go out and put someone in power who will do the right thing.
Yeah, they're not necessarily connected, like the racism and who's in power, although Trump has arguably polarized America a lot more. And it'd be interesting to see if Biden gets in, would America remain as polarized as it is?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they can put the genie back in that lamp.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
if Republicans
Trump side
lose this.
Yeah.
If Republicans lose this vote, you can imagine them being even more pissed off. I mean, they're in power now and they're polarized, but
they are demographically the minority, though. If the Democrats swept in with enough power to get control of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, and then enact reforms which fixed some of those big systemic, you know, voter oppression rules, or mandated, you know, legal right to vote for everyone, or made it a federal holiday, or removed gerrymandering and all these kind of things, then it would bring the conservative movement in America back down to a more statistically fair basis, which is that they are actually the minority in that country, based on the popularity of beliefs and that sort of thing. Which doesn't mean
it's weird.
Doesn't mean they shouldn't get to have a say.
They should just cut the country in half, have the top half and have the bottom half, and be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a viable option, but we can.
No, it is.
You can submit it into Biden.
I'll send him I'll slide into his DMs.
I mean, the problem as well is that the reality is that it's not just top and bottom. It is actually much more metropolitan versus rural, and that's a very interesting problem, and one that we don't really have the time to go into. But
that's kind of the same here, though. Don't you feel
absolutely
like in rural parts of any country they're a little bit?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because when you're in a metropolitan environment and around a whole bunch of different people, you're more likely to encounter people from different backgrounds, people of different ages, people different lifestyles and different things, and very quickly that normalizes for you in a way where you're like, oh, gay people aren't evil, they're just as annoying as everyone else, Yeah. When you're part of a community and a bigger part of a community, I think that breeds more tolerance than being literally in a bubble, I suppose, out in a rural area with very little diversity.
Yeah, I guess, that's totally right. Good answer, Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, don't look it up, but that is the correct answer.
I got one thing here. Can I hit you with this?
Yeah.
So I came across this, which is a quote from 1984. Now, 1984 is a funny one because people like to put out 1984 quotes in certain times when if there's anything, maybe not just 1984, but if there's any part of any book that seems in any way prophetic, it's like, oh shit, we got told and we didn't listen. Yeah, but this one was eerily kind of. Let me read out this quick quote from 1984. Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. That does seem fitting in a way. I mean, in terms of not just like the taking down of statues, but having this party line that is kind of sacrosanct, and if you question it, that you're kind of vilified for it.
Yes. Are you suggesting that we are on the path to that world?
No. Well, it struck a chord for me just because the 1984. Whenever anyone brings it up about Big Brother or this groupthink or thought crime or whatever, they always refer to that happening from the state,
right?
Whereas now it's kind of seems like it's kind of happening from the people.
But doesn't that by definition mean that there will not just be a monolithic ability to erase history? If it's not the state that is instituting that, then surely there'll always be a opposing force to counterbalance any kind of inclination, right? It's only the state that really has the power to properly create a 1984 style, fascistic kind of state, right? That you can't grow that kind of rewriting history from the ground up.
Well, I kind of think you can. And just not in a clear cut way.
But if it's not clear cut, then that isn't what you're describing, is it?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean,
I don't know, I thought
there's
that was something.
I think Orwell is talking in was depicting an extreme, right, for a hypothetical purpose, a narrative purpose. He was showing the worst possible example of this happening as a cautionary tale, right? So I think there's something to be taken from that. You know, the idea that you don't want to. I almost don't know if that's about the idea of history itself, because in that novel it is for political gain that the state is rewriting history, right? They are changing their mind for their own, to ensure their own security at the top of the power hierarchy. I don't know that the idea that they're rewriting history is actually about the content of the history, right? Maybe that's a very narrow distinction, but the purpose of the what's the, is it Politburo or something like that? I forget what the body in the book was actually called that was in charge of that sort of stuff. But they're using that as a tool to suppress the people and ensure that their political goals were achieved. I think in a way that's kind of different to our current situation, right? Where what's actually being done is a ground up re-examination of effectively what has been told, right? It is the people looking at the history book and saying that doesn't accord with our current standards. I mean, do you see where I'm coming at there? Like, I think that they're slightly different.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That does make a lot of sense. And I think it is taken out of, people like to take Orwell, especially, out of context and use it for whatever. But I think that specifically is something that is being circulated around right-wing, kind of personalities by right-wing personalities like Ben Shapiro and stuff. So that's kind of where they're coming from. I think, and it's easy to get sucked into that. But even just hearing you kind of explain that a little bit now, I'm like, you completely knocked me off that horse already.
My argument as well about the whole tearing down of statues was all that current day society is doing. Take for a moment the methodology out of it, right? Take the idea of pulling it down and throwing it into a river versus doing it legally. All that modern day society is doing is looking around at the street, the world that they inherited from previous generations, taking their current morality and cultural understanding, listening to the voices that we are now listening to, and applying that to the aesthetic of the city, the world around us, and saying, based on our current world, this statue doesn't accord with what we stand for as a society, so we're taking it down.
That's what your mate said in the Age, kind of.
Yeah.
The Chaser guy.
That Chaz Licciardello did a piece about it. About actually comedy censorship more than statues. But in the same way, historically, 100 years ago, that era, that community, with its morals, with its understanding of history, with the voices that they were listening to at the time, which probably was the exclusion of relevant people, looked around at the street and said, we're going to put up a statue because that represents who we are as a society and what we value, and this guy's cool, right? And I think if you say that they were able to look around and apply their morals and interests to the world and make a physical impression on it for future generations, then so too must you allow our generation to look around and make those changes too. Otherwise, only in the past were people able to be proactive and shape the world in their present, and you're allowing them more rights to do so than you're allowing the current generation to do what they will with the world they inherited.
Yeah, totally. It's like it's not your house anymore. Like,
Yeah.
you moved out. It's and the other thing that's kind of interesting that it just occurred to me is that, like, it might be an argument against people who are really fighting for these statues to remain up, is that, or conservatives, I guess, is that, I mean, it's kind of similar to how they worship, Mao Zedong in China and stuff. Having these big photos or statues of these people that did horrific things. Like, do you really want to be kind of doing the same thing that they're doing in that they're kind of worshipping people who have done bad things? I get it's not the same, and at least they're probably acknowledging that Confederate, whatever they're called, captains. I don't even know.
Yeah,
Confederate people are, at least they're acknowledging it, but it's kind of similar to how, like, they do it in China, kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are other historical comparisons you can draw, again, for not being quite the same. Like destruction by ISIS of, like, historical Syrian, like, landmarks, right? Thousands of years old, precious human, like proto-human style civilizational relics. That's different to a 100-year-old statue of like recent history.
Yeah.
Even I think, it's instructive to look at something like Rio Tinto blowing up 46,000-year-old, like, Aboriginal caves with irreplaceable, historical value. And that seems to go by fairly uncommented from, the conservative side of things, where if you want to really talk about the destruction of history, about the cultural worth, then there needs to be much more attention paid to the the actions of corporations and things, which tend to go by under the radar, as they just ransack literally the earliest evidence of human civilization.
That's another interesting thing, though, actually, because it's the length of time. Because if you go to Mongolia, they've got statues of Genghis Khan.
Yeah,
but it's like it's not in the recent history. It's not in the memory of the DNA of the people still living.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they're so detached from a guy like Genghis Khan that it's almost like, now you kind of like now it's like a symbol of the past, rather than who we are today.
Yeah. Plus, like, half of Asia is related to Genghis Khan now, so it's kind of like a family thing anyway.
Yeah, we're all related.
Like, my mum made a similar point. She's like, "Oh, you're gonna try and knock over the Colosseum because they were, like, killing slaves in, like, lion fights. You're gonna go to Athens and knock over the Parthenon because it was like they were slave traders and all this kind of thing." And I think you just said it right then, that there's a distance between the people affected, right? 2,000 years ago is long enough into history where that object becomes its own item of value, distinct from the people, because it is evidence of different society. There's nothing currently that stops people from learning about, Christopher Columbus in any way, shape, or form. Yet the connections, or perhaps Churchill is another good example. The people actively impacted by that person's behavior are still very much living and very much feeling the cultural, economic consequences of that person's behavior, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we can save the statues and we can put them up again in 1,000 years. That'll be fine. I mean, so maybe we'll just put them aside, put them in a time, whatever that's called, a time lock. What is that called? Time capsule. And then 1,000 years, bring them up, study them, and we'll erect them. It's fine.
I mean, I think there's actually that's a very good and interesting argument, right? Let's take all the bad statues, right? The statues that people think deserves to still be up, get them out of the river, grab them all, build a fucking museum wing, right? build an entire museum wing and put all of the questionable statues from that city or town or country and put them there. And you know what? More people will learn from that by it being a complete quote-unquote exhibit, a complete aggregate of the historical veneration of problematic figures en masse with, you know, appropriate placarding and stuff, by having that in the one place, than they would from any individual representation that you walk past on the street completely by itself.
Totally. And yeah, you've been to Hiroshima, like they've got a whole thing dedicated to it there, and that's still very much in the living memory of everyone still around in Japan at the moment.
Would love to be to go to Hiroshima, but I haven't been to Hiroshima. I've been to the museum dedicated to it, but that was just in Osaka. That wasn't in.
But I guess what is the difference there? I mean, when the Japanese, in that case, are kind of taking, I guess it's kind of like they are owning it and accepting it, rather than, also they were the victims. That's not even close to being.
Well, I mean, I went to the international. It was like an international peace museum or something, and their actual mandate or goal was to depict what happened in such a way to advocate for the complete removal of all atomic weaponry internationally, right? Like their goal was like, if you saw what this did, if you see the aftermath of this kind of war, then you will not want this to happen. And so we maintain and uphold the history of that thing in quite horrifying detail, so as to make the case, you know, it should never happen again. The other interesting suggestion as to what do we do with these statues, if you don't like my first one of put them all in a museum together, Banksy put up a suggestion. I don't know if you saw this. He suggested that you grab the statue and you mount it back where it was, half toppled, and then you add 3 more cast iron people and a rope connecting it, so that the statue is now a statue of the statue coming down. You put in the protesters pulling it midway down through the thing, and that in itself suddenly adds so much more meaning and interesting consideration to it, don't you think?
We should make Banksy in charge of everything. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
that is brilliant. Cool. The other thing I just want to touch on connected to this is the so we talked about the statues, but the other thing that's happening with the whole Black Lives Matter thing is you've got people are pulling up blackface of comedians or actors doing blackface in the past. I saw that Nestle today have announced that they're discontinuing or rebranding Chico's.
Oh, really? I didn't hear that.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Just before we came on air, and then, like we said, the Netflix thing. So Netflix is scrubbing, Chris Lilly's stuff that we've done blackface. So where do you stand on that? Is that the same as moving on as a society, and like you said, as not having things that we actually don't deem appropriate for the age that we live in, or is that something else? Or is that just corporations wanting to be in the clear, or escape controversy?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting, right? And it's going to be a little bit unfortunate because I think my answer is going to parrot a lot of what I read Chaz Licciardello's statement on this today, because I think he says it really concisely. I'll put that in the chapter links if you're listening on your podcast player. Just click through the links and you can have a look at it. But the idea that he put forward is that tastes evolve and change, and that is a natural process that all networks and all television stations and content creators go through. And yes, it was probably not okay that Chris Lilly was in blackface 15 years ago, but it happened. But now, all that these networks are really doing is responding to their demands, as in the tastes of the audience that they are currently providing for, and that is their job. They do it every fucking year. They cancel, I don't know. They cancel American Idol, and then they go into MasterChef for a while, or they give a couple of shows to Tina Fey, and then Donald Glover comes up, and those are not the same things, obviously, but you hear what I'm saying. Like, the expression of art is ever evolving, increasingly fickle, and it's disposable in a way that it reflects a culture and a time. If you ever go back and you watch Friends now, it was the most popular show in the world, but by today's standards, it's a little bit tired. It's definitely very homophobic, and it's super white, and it's still very popular to this day. But every network that is out there is not trying to make Friends, because the tastes of the audience are different these days. So, in the long-winded ramble, which is my style, answer to your question, I think that when they're getting rid of this Chris Lilly stuff, it doesn't mean that you can't find the DVD of it. It doesn't mean that you can't, watch Gone with the Wind on iTunes or anywhere else that you want to. It just means that network doesn't see on, a balance sheet a net worth from having that potentially controversial asset there, and paying money for that, when it could invite a whole heap of questions that they don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, this one I'm a little bit on the fence with. Just because, they cancelled, or someone got rid of Gone with the Wind, which was
HBO Max took it off the network for a little while, and it will return with a like a placard at the top which says this film contains historical racism or whatever, and then it'll just play out as it did.
All right, yeah. It's trickier with art, because I think I said at the top of the pod that that history is, we're reminded of history best, I think, through art. And so, as opposed to erecting statues in honor of people who did horrible things, I think art is a snapshot in time. And with Gone with the Wind, that black actress, it was a terrible stereotypical depiction of black women, but she also won. It was like the first black woman to win an Oscar for that. So there's that. I think, and it's easier to associate film or art or books with a point in time. So I have a bit more of a problem with scratching the art from our history, if that's what we're doing, and also with the Chris Lilly stuff. I get Megan Kelly here, but Jimmy Fallon got done for doing he got called out for doing a Chris Rock impression 12 years ago, and I think there is it's not acceptable, right? But there is a stark difference between the kind of blackface they were doing in the 1930s and Jimmy Fallon, who, if we break this down for what it really is anyone thinking Jimmy Fallon's actually a racist guy? No. Jimmy Fallon is a comedian, and he's a great impressionist, and he's doing an impression of Chris Rock, who happens to have darker skin than he does. So, it's insensitive. I wouldn't encourage anyone to do that. But and obviously I'm not a black guy, and it's not my place to say, I guess, any of this. But if you break it down, it's like, it's not. And Chris Lilly's the same. Like, these guys, maybe it's insensitive for the time, but they're not doing anything maybe they are doing something harmful. I'm tripping over my words because I'm scared. They're not. Their intent is not anything malicious. It's just to replicate a type of character. And it's weird that you can have a movie like White Chicks, and that's going to be totally okay, where that's completely, the movie's called White Chicks, and it's two black guys in whiteface. And I get that. I should shut up now, shouldn't I?
No, you're making points.
I get that white people don't have a history of persecution, and they don't have a history of. We don't have a history of being persecuted persecuted by black people and dressing up in the fucking 1900s, and and also black people weren't allowed to act at that time, so it's like a whole thing. But there is a difference between Jimmy Fallon and whatever they called. There was like some
like
word for
minstrel
the films that they
shows
used to do.
and like original, like classic 1900s racism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that in the same way that we judge the actions of sexual predators like Louis C.K. and Matt Lauer versus
Chris D'Elia now.
Weinstein.
Goodbye, Chris D'Elia, by the way.
Oh
boy.
There is
That's a proper Me Too, by the way. That is a proper Me Too.
Yeah. The in the same way that there are shades and levels of things, you need to also accept that there are probably shades of oh my god, what a sentence. Here we go. There's shades of blackface. I think you are right that the attention that Jimmy Fallon had in doing blackface was impressionistic, right? As you say, he was mimicking a person that people knew, and they put makeup on him. That was wrong. It was probably pretty hurtful to some viewers as well. Probably not Chris Rock, but I don't want to speak for him. I think actually there is a distinction between him and Chris Lilly, because I think Chris Lilly's is more problematic than Jimmy Fallon, because Chris Lilly was using blackface to do fictional characters. He wasn't doing an impression of someone that was recognizable. He wasn't standing in the shoes of someone in a way that the audience was trying to recognize who the person he was doing, right? Chris Lilly was
Little Britain did the same thing.
I know, and they have also come out and talked about that and apologized for it. And to be fair to them, have been doing so for like, I think about 7 years now. But they had the opposite to Chris Rock, weirdly, when Chris Rock was like, I've apologized and I talked about it in the past and I'm never going to apologize for my homophobia again. The Little Britain...
Sorry, Chris Rock?
Chris Rock, in the Oscars controversy, when he...
Kevin Hart?
I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Sorry, Chris Rock was in my head.
If you don't leave that in, I'm going to be pissed.
Fuck. Okay. But, yeah, I'll have to leave that in, but Jesus Christ, that's terrible. Kevin Hart. Fuck me. There's no point even trying to make this a point anymore.
I want to hear it.
Okay. Kevin Hart said, I'm not going to apologize for my homophobia. And yeah, I did it in the past and never going to do it again. The Little Britain guys apologized for it in the past. They apologized for it again when it came up, and they said, we'll continue to apologize for it in the future, which I thought was a really nice reflection on what they felt their duty was to those offended. Going back to Chris Lilly, I think, again, there's a distinction between Chris Lilly and Jimmy Fallon, because, as I said, Chris Lilly was creating characters that didn't exist. They weren't impressions of people that were out there. They were just him deciding he wanted to be, a Tongan person or a rapper, an American rapper. And that, I think, is more problematic.
Is that considered blackface? Is that considered blackface in...
I think so, yeah.
I mean... They don't seem black to me. They don't seem black.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's the thing, right? They were clearly sensitive enough about it that they were trying to be more natural. It wasn't like a fucking 1940s smear of black paint on the face, was it? It was, they were trying to do like actual skin, like almost like a spray tan type thing, which is almost more problematic when you're like, we should try and get this pretty close to real, otherwise people will think it's an issue. At that point, you probably need to step back and go, if we're trying to find the line to walk here, then maybe there isn't a line. Maybe it should just be a no.
What about these bodybuilders that they come out darker than Chris Lilly ever did?
Yeah.
But they're not going for anything. But what about Robert Downey Jr.? That's an interesting one.
I was just thinking about that one. Yeah.
He played an actor playing an actor who's playing blackface. So it's like your knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, but then if you actually break it down, he's playing a guy in blackface.
Yeah, as he says in the.
I wonder if he's nervous right now.
Possibly. I mean, I
Probably
think
safe. No one wants to go after Robert Downey Jr. He's had it hard enough.
I think there is a question of artistic purpose, right? It was interesting because I saw today that a couple of 30 Rock episodes were taken down, including the 2 live episodes. This was at the request of Tina Fey and Robert Carlock. The live episodes where John Hamm did blackface in what was
Oh, did he?
in what was a deliberate satirical flashback to like a 60s era cartoon, right?
I'm
And
Googling
they've
this
made
right now. John Hamm blackface.
30 Rock. And the
Oh my god. Yeah. Go on.
Can you see? You can see why there might be a problem.
I mean, they didn't go full blackface though.
Yeah,
He's like a white guy with an afro,
yeah.
which is worse.
The idea
For some reason, I don't know why.
was clearly intended satirically. Like all of those people are smart enough to know that
Yes.
what they're playing with, right? The artistic goal was not to suggest that this was appropriate. In fact, it was the opposite. It was to suggest how wrong
Right.
this was, right? So I do think there has to be, as you say, some consideration of the artistic intent behind it, much as you consider the intent
Sure.
of a joke about abortion or about, I don't know, gay people or whatever. You have to give some consideration to that. But at the same time...
But do you think that the cancel culture at the moment, society actually has the ability to take that into consideration?
I think so.
Do you think they have the ability to process that and say, okay, this is a blackface, but it's with artistic intent, and this is a blackface just because they're lazy and hack?
I think so. I think actually there is enough seriousness with which this issue is being treated that allows for that kind of consideration. I don't know necessarily whether or not they had. I mean, in me looking up that image of John Hamm just then, the article that came out was from 2012, which was John Hamm dons blackface on 30 Rock, the reactions. And so clearly, even back then, it was getting some
Bit of heat.
some attention. But even then, I think there was some arguings basically saying that blackface, the idea that blackface is okay only if we're meta about it, is not satisfactory to actual members of that community. I think the argument is that it's too problematic to even be worth doing satirically, at least in a comedy sense. Maybe if you were doing it in a dramatic sense, if it was like a historical movie, like a classic, like the Academy always loves to give Oscars to, like it's set in the 1920s about like an early Hollywood director or something like that. Maybe when it has that kind of seriousness with which it was treated, then you can do it. And trying to do it for jokes is taboo still.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, whether or not you agree with the removal of, these kind of problematic shows or art or whatever, whether you think that the removal of statues is appropriate or rash or uncivil or totally justified, I think surely we can agree it's a good thing that society is reckoning with its history, right? Either way you fall, the idea that people are paying attention to what happened and to where we are sitting as a culture and as a community and a society, that's got to be good, right?
Yeah, it's a lot easier to accept if you zoom out and try and understand where we are in the context of history, rather than focusing just on where we are right now. If you think about people in the 1960s, I would have been up in arms about, whatever thing that they were up in arms about. That now we look back and think, how could they ever think that smoking was good?
Yeah.
So it's way easier if you just zoom out and just try and look at what is happening in the world. I mean, one thing that happens with society, I think, is you get to a point of breaking and there's an overcorrection that happens. So I think like the Me Too movement, for example, is in some ways an overcorrection and then it comes back. And I think it acts like a kind of pendulum like that a little bit. So maybe we're in a time right now where maybe some things feel a little bit too far, but eventually I think that society will even itself out, and the overcorrection will come back to kind of like a default position. And you got to have faith that it will do that, because it's the only way that it will actually work, because people will still live their lives. People won't put up with a whole bunch of shit for too long. So if you're worried about that, I'm just rambling now. But if you're worried about that, have faith that society will swing back.
Yeah. If I mean, too many people are too invested in their lives and in their world for one thing to go on forever, right? If I can use your analogy and expand on it, rather than like a pendulum, I think it's kind of more like a crane with a wrecking ball at the end, like trying to bash through a building, and it hits the wall, and then society changes, and then very slowly the tensions build up, or the irritations or the frustrations, and the ball gets wound back and back and back and back and back, and then eventually it hits a point where it can't sustain itself anymore, and the ball drops and swings into the wall again and changes everything again, and there's a new status quo, and the dust settles, and then the tensions build again, and it swings back and back and back. I think you're totally right. There's a tick-tock to it, but it's like, it's because society is active and evolving. It's because people are making choices and speaking up.
Society is a muscle that's tearing, and that it needs to tear in order to grow.
Yeah.
Wow, fuck, that was good.
Nicely
Vote
done.
for your favorite analogy, guys. In the comments.
Or just jump onto our Facebook page. There's such a nice bunch of people over there that follow along with some of the stories that we put up and the chat along about our episodes. Facebook.com/DeepFort. There's a Twitter.com as well, where you can get notified if a new episode comes up. You can find the entire archive of our previous 140 episodes. 140 today, Michael.
Cool.
Today's the 140. Deepfort.podbean.com if you're on the web, or just scroll down your podcast player, look for them all there. They're all there, I promise. Instagram, look for Deep Fort. There's a wonderful selection of recommendations. There's some chip advice, and there is no evidence that Michael has ever gone to the gym. There's a email address, deepfort@gmail.com, where you can send your questions and comments and chip in, and we'll be delighted to hear from you and read you out on the show. Give you a shout out if you like. And that's the end of that podcast chapter.
Didn't know we had a Twitter, to be honest.
You say that every time.
I've just gotten back onto Twitter.
I
know
know
why? Because of this Crystalia shit. Because I just want to hear about people's takes. I want to hear like these comedians' takes on it, because they're all friends with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm just refreshing Twitter all the time just so I can hear their takes.
You liked... I sent a message to you saying, hey, Michael, test, are you on this Twitter thing? You responded to me this week saying, yep, 4 years after I sent the tweet, which I respect. That's a long hustle. Well done.
Yeah, I am, baby. I never left.
Alrighty, you have a weird news for me. Should we do it?
Yeah, cracker of a weird news as well.
I can't remember if we set up the theme tune for it. No, it just kind of plays, right?
Yeah, just who cares?
Just say it. Just say the words.
Just say it. I love you. Okay, I love you. I love you.
In the news today from the Strange and Weird Fact File.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. suppose
Deputies
that's what I
say
thought
the
anyway.
suspect told them he's been performing sex acts on animals since the
That's what I told about
1970s.
my close encounter with the Yeti. Totally true.
A sticky situation at an airport in Tennessee after baggage was sprayed with rust.
Turns out the government has been taking them seriously all along.
This is Deep Thought Weird News with Michael Zubarevkala-Sludge.
Is that what you wanted? All right. In the weird news today. Let me do that again.
Do you want me to leave that part in?
I guess fuck it. I'm not doing it again. Just leave that in. All right. This is a recent weird news, which is weird for weird news. Because most of the weird news has been in the past. All right. Headline: a 6-year-old alcoholic monkey in India will serve a life sentence.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yes, you do. So this is from June motherfucking 16th. And we're recording on June
Motherfucking 23rd.
So this is like
This
a
is
week old. So it's basically a newborn. All right, so here we go. A monkey in India was a pet of a local occultist. Do you know what an occultist is?
Do you know what an occultist is?
Okay, don't try and flip the tables. I'm trying to
You were
sound
saying
smart
it-
by
You were saying so smugly in a way that was
It's like a
completely
guy who's-
transparent.
a guy who's into the dark
Or
arts,
girl.
you know. Or girl, but it was a guy.
Yeah, but an
Sure.
occultist.
I don't know. Yeah, okay. You're ruining weirdness.
I'm ruining weird news. You're the one who can't even fucking talk.
I've had a bottle of wine. All right. So the monkey's name, by the way, was Kalua.
Oh, so you asked me
You
what an
couldn't-
occultist is. You jumped in.
Ah!
You were the one who was like, "Oh,
Get
do
out.
you know what
I
an
don't care if
occultist
it was
is?"
my fault.
You're just fucking throwing mud at me for something you instituted.
All right. Fine. All right. Kalua was the name of the monkey. Did you get that?
Okay,
Kalua.
ironic.
Was the pet monkey of a local occultist who would regularly give him liquor to drink. Over a period of time, the monkey became alcoholic, and when the occultist died, Kalua stopped getting liquor and became aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Here we get to the news. Kalua went on a biting spree in Mirzapur in India and bit several children, one of which died.
Oh God.
And they think it's because the monkey became so addicted to alcohol that when he didn't have it anymore, became so irritable and needed to get it and became aggressive and started biting kids left, right, and center. Bit 3 kids apparently, and one of these kids died. And so now Kalua will remain in captivity for the rest of his life for his drinking.
So, captivity?
The monkey is
Or
6 years
monkey
old, by
jail?
the way.
Like, are they
he's
putting it in a zoo?
No, he's in.
Are they putting
No,
it in
he's
like
put-
a
they-
prison population?
They're putting it in prison.
So why? Here's my question: if you've got a
They're
rabid
obviously
monkey,
not putting it in prison. They're not obviously putting it in prison.
no, no.
just other rapists and murderers.
I know that. But if you're talking about they'll be in captivity, that's serious, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've had
you want a picture?
murder monkey, then
Yeah.
why keep it alive? Like at that point, what are you trying to do? You're trying to wean it off alcohol more gently? Do you think it could be rehabilitated?
Well-
Why is this
Well,
monkey
you get it into a
surviving?
program and you
I
I
mean,
mean,
are
look,
they hoping to
everyone-
get community
everyone-
service?
look, everyone makes mistakes.
Uh-huh. To be honest, it's still a
So-
child itself.
It is. Yeah, but in monkey, what is it in monkey years though?
I think
know, I'm
monkey
a
years
monkey
and
man.
human years are pretty similar. I mean, I just saw a gibbon this week that was 50 years old.
What? What? Why did you see a gibbon? Oh, you went to like a zoo or something, didn't
I
you?
went to the zoo. Yeah, I went to Willowbrook. I got chased by birds.
I'm googling. Are monkey ears Yep, it already came up as predicted. I love it when Google does that. When you type in a stupid question and then Google's like, you're like
not the
halfway through and
only one
Google's
who's
like,
thought of this
do you mean
before."
this? And you're like, yes, I thought I was the only one. All right. All right. They live to between 4 and 29.
What, dude?
So
4 and
monkeys.
29.
So, yeah. A 29 apparently is 105 in human years.
Oh.
So this monkey, what's your math?
This monkey's still, 18.
30s.
I suppose it's no, 18. If you think of it as like a third, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably an adult now, to be honest.
30s. Yeah, it's our age, dude. It's our age. This monkey is our age, which is why I brought it up. This could happen to us.
It's not.
And it did actually.
Yeah. The
Anyway.
I just don't get of all the, there's a lot of capital punishment meted out to bad animals around the world. I just don't get why this one that killed a child. And by the way, that's got to be a rough conversation to have, a few years time when someone sidles up to you and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your daughter's passing. How did she go?" It's a bit wild that you have to say a monkey called Kahlua mauled her to death. Like, that's not something that you can really...
No. And that's
not one that gets easier with time.
And what are they hoping for? I mean, this monkey's serving a life sentence now, but with good behavior, what is he going to be back out in the streets? In 20 years' time, doing tricks with cobras or something? I don't know.
Cobra tricks.
But they said that this monkey is so antisocial right now that he's not even befriending his keeper, who's the one that's giving him food. So he's so messed up in the head. This
Exactly.
occultist.
I don't know what's the point here. This is an absurd ruling. I think the family of the deceased should appeal.
You want to kill the monkey?
I just think, like,
You wanna kill the monkey.
what's the point here? Yes, it was abused, and yes, it was, created drunk, alcoholic tendencies. But, like, it killed a human child.
Yeah. And that's just one of the people that it killed. It says it bit over
killed one, but it
250 people.
What?
It bit 250 people. One died. Oh my god! And
It bit like a medium-sized theater worth of people. It bit one session of The Matrix and killed someone.
Yeah.
I don't get how they're like, you know what? We can change him.
Yeah. What's the best case scenario here?
Yeah.
The monkey clearly wants to die as well.
Yeah, euthanasia. Yeah. And that's the cheery end of this podcast.